Hey everyone, hope the sound's coming through okay. You should be seeing your comments right here to my side. And yeah, I'm going to be hanging out with you guys for about 20 minutes or so. And I wanted to take all your questions. So, let me see. I got another screen over here. Let's see what I'm seeing come up now. Benny, could you give us some advice on how to stay motivated in learning a language? I would say for this one, I would always try to keep things interesting. So, for instance, when I don't know if you guys saw my email, but I'm actually going to be going to the opera on Tuesday. So on Monday, I'm going to have a study session that I'm going to share with you guys live here. And that is an opportunity for me to expand my use of the language because, of course, that's going to be in a different language. In this case, it's going to be French for me. And whenever I want to keep my motivation up, I find that I need to do more fun things like that. So maybe you should read a book in another language. Like you guys might have seen in my last video, I happen to have Harry Potter in Irish. So see if you got something along those lines that you'd be able to check out. And otherwise, for motivation, I would say in terms of what you're learning, you still have to do the kind of typical grammar study, vocabulary, and so on. But I would try to mix it up in some way. Like maybe you still need to learn grammar, but that particular grammar book that you're using isn't as interesting. So you might want to switch to another one. And keeping it interesting like that, keeping variation, because you might be losing your motivation if the particular thing you're using is not very interesting, it's not fun, it's not engaging you, or it's too hard. And maybe you might want to start listening to podcasts or something along those lines. So I hope that answers your question. Let me see. I want to make sure I'm not missing too many questions here. You guys will see them all coming up. Okay. So, saludos desde Colombia. Saludos, Leo. I'll say a quick hello to a few of you. Hi to Anorexa Forever. A strange name. Hi to Antonio. And Anorax. Sorry, I misread that. My coffee still hasn't kicked in. My coffee never seems to kick in. I need stronger coffee. Anorax Forever is in Singapore. Iveslakvia, if I said that right. Anastasia. Hello. Antonio, hi. Who's in Italy, or I should say, ciao. Okay, we have Mahmoud and Belal Polyglot. Hello to you. And then Iveslakvia Anastasia. So, see, I still have trouble with saying a lot of words myself. Could you get? So that's the question I was just answering. Bilal is in Egypt. Lorna. Hi, Lorna. Okay. All right. So I'm going to answer Emil's question next. Is it possible to be fluent just by your own and reading script? Let me make your comments come up live again. Actually, let me type this in for you. Can you learn using script? So that way you guys kind of know what I'm talking about temporarily. So I find that if you're using the written form, that serves a particular purpose. So I wouldn't say don't learn by the written form, because that is a learning process that a lot of people enjoy. A lot of people learn languages specifically to read, and reading can be a really fulfilling part of language learning. And if that's your goal, then keep doing that and focus on the scripts, the kind of, if you're learning, for instance, Chinese or Arabic, you have to learn a different script for those languages. I would keep that as your focus. Now, I would say, though, in my particular case, I want to focus on speaking the language well, and I want to be able to read and write it. Of course, I do want to be able to read and write it, but that's not my priority. And it's all well and good and say, but I want to do this and I want to do that. And of course, it's important to do this. But if your priority isn't taken into account, then you're not going to be able to do it very well. So I would focus on speaking the language and understanding what you're hearing, because that's going to allow you to interact with people if that's your goal. If your goal is that spoken interaction, then try to make that your purpose. In terms of the scripts, it depends on the language. Like I would learn just enough to be able to see the vocabulary that I'm using and get a grip on that. And you might have seen this in my Arabic or Chinese projects and how I kind of process that. But I still try to learn a language mostly audibly. My friend Idausa has a course that doesn't even talk about the written form because of how that morphs the language for some people coming from another language. And he just talks about how to speak it and understand it. Okay, let me see. So, moving on. Hope that kind of answers your question there. Enrique says, "Hi Benny, I'm a big fan of yours, and I'd like to know how do you keep motivated." I think we actually had 2 questions on motivation. That's great. I got to answer 2 questions at once. Okay, so Jonathan says, "Can you describe the relationship between confidence and fluency?" Oh, I like this question. Okay, let me put that up here. So, relationship between confidence and fluency. And I'll resize that. You guys see I'm getting slightly better at this thing. Not perfect, but better, slightly better every time, you know? As they say on a few different quotes I've heard, in your projects you want to suck a little less every time. I'm sucking a little less at live video today. Okay, so the relationship between confidence and fluency is extraordinarily strong. Let me tell you about this through something that genuinely happened to me. When I started the blog, the very first project I had was to learn Czech. I haven't maintained Czech, so it's not part of my language list, but I did have a pretty successful first summer in trying to learn it. And Czech is known as a notoriously difficult language to a lot of people. Now, the thing is, I went into that language with a lot of confidence. And I think I got a lot of that confidence from learning previous languages. This is one of the things I tell people is why I feel a polyglot may be better at language learning. It's not necessarily because of their brain chemistry changing or something like that. It's because they get more confident. So I was out with some couch surfers, and maybe I was 3 weeks into the project, so speaking pretty terrible Tarzan Czech, or just putting one word after the other, nothing particularly complex. And what happened was, I remember there was this Brazilian who was with the group, who had been learning Czech for a very long time, and very unlike many Brazilians I've met, he was way too much of a perfectionist and like waiting until he could speak, until he could say everything correctly. And so while we were out, I would keep turning to this guy, and I'd say, "Oh, how do you say this in Czech?" He would tell me, and I would speak back to the group because we had native speakers with us. And those native speakers said that I spoke better than the Brazilian. Now, from a purely factual perspective, that was so completely wrong, because the Brazilian had been learning way more than me. He definitely knew more words, more vocabulary, more expressions, more everything. But I was more confident, and I came across as more fluent because of that. I was not fluent, but a slightly higher degree than I was. And they said that I spoke better than that guy who would have been at least an intermediate level. And this is because when you're speaking a language and you're doing it confidently, part of fluency is that it flows. And you flow a lot better when you're hesitating and second guessing yourself a lot less. So, the famous example that I always tell people this whenever I'm giving one of my talks, but if you are... I knew I was going to have some kind of a technical problem today. That's my camera on its tripod getting loose. It's always something. My goodness. Although at least this was not an electrical technical problem. This was just an adjusting the camera technical problem. Anyway, that should do it. Sorry about that, everyone. So I was saying, there, we're good. Okay. So I forget what example I was saying. Like I said, the coffee hasn't kicked in. I was talking about my Czech fluency level. Somebody remind me where I was for that. The camera falling. I swear I lose my attention so quickly. Anyway, the connection between fluency and confidence. I was saying that it flows, and when you hesitate, the example. Okay, you thought I fell out of my chair, did you, Claire? It certainly looked like that. The example I was going to give was the Jack Sparrow way of speaking a language, and you guys would have seen me blog about this quite a lot. Essentially, I would begin to speak a language, and I might say, I want to go to the supermarket. And that's like a weird dramatic pause thing that I always associate with Jack Sparrow. But that is kind of injecting confidence into what you're saying. And that confidence makes you seem way more fluent. So that's kind of what I would say to answer that question. Okay, so James is helping me moderate this. So James, you're going to be picking the questions that I've been missing since then, because I've been scrolling by quite a lot of them here. So I'm going to pick one at random, but James is going to help me to select certain ones. So let's see. Claire Panicia, I'm not sure which one. She says, how do you maintain language speaking skills when you're not regularly exposed to the language anymore? For example, when you return home. Okay, so that one, there's two things I would suggest for you, Claire. I would say, firstly, you should try to see, like, I don't know where you live. If you're seeing this, maybe you'll write a quick comment, and maybe I know the city you're living in. But I would try to see what kind of communities or means of meeting foreigners exist in your city. And I would do this a lot myself with something like through couchsurfing, which isn't the same as what it used to be a few years ago, but there would be, I'm sure, alternatives. And so with couchsurfing, I would go to meetings and try to meet people who speak the language I wanted to practice. And I would also try to invite couch surfers to my home. And this is something a lot of people wouldn't really consider. But I would set my couch surfing profile to say, because I would live in a very popular city. For example, I lived in Amsterdam. Okay, Claire lives in Ohio, which is something I'll come to in a second. But I lived in Amsterdam, and I would invite couch surfers there. I think I hosted maybe like 15 people over the 2 months I was there. One of them happened to be a French speaker, and that's because on my profile I said I would like to practice these languages. So I got a lot of people messaging me in English to stay over, get the spare couch, but I would prioritize those with languages that I was learning. And I invited the French speaker over, and I actually made a video with her you'd see on the channel where I got to practice my Quebec French. So that's one thing. You can also see if your local university does exchange programs, and you could see if they have meetups for those kinds of people. Ohio, specifically, to answer where you are, Claire, you, I hope, would have seen the video I did with Moses McCormick in Columbus, Ohio, and he demonstrates in your very state what you can do without needing to travel. He literally goes to his local mall. You would probably recognize the mall if you saw the video. And he just walks up to people, and he kind of tries to gauge them by saying, excuse me, do you know what time it is? And he has to do this a lot of times, and he has to kind of see, do they look like maybe they're from a different country? And you live in Columbus yourself, and so I would definitely check out Moses McCormick's channel, because he shows the places he'd go to that you'd probably recognize. But even if you don't live in that city, anyone else reading this, just go out and try to practice the language of people. That's one thing. And then quickly to move on, The other thing I would recommend is Skype. So go to italki.com and sign up for a conversation exchange or find a teacher and you do it that way. Okay, so let's see. So James is telling me that I think I already took a question from Anastasia, so I'm going to see. Linda says, do you have any advice on how to get to a near native or very advanced level? Okay, I like this question. Let me replace current question is get to near native or very advanced level. Our current topic. Okay, so let's see. So this idea of getting near native has two layers to it. One of them is seeming as native as possible, so that the amount of people who think that you're like from another country is reduced, and the other is having a native level in terms of content in the language. And a lot of people think these are the same thing, and these are very, very different. That you can have a much lower level than somebody who knows the language inside and out, and potentially still be confused for a native speaker. Let me see. Just want to make sure my webcam, get that fuzziness a little bit out. There we go. So if you are trying to make it so that you seem more native, this is about how people perceive your level. So I had this project in Rio where I wanted to, at some stage in my time there, I wanted some Brazilians to think that maybe I was Brazilian. Now, to do that kind of native perception from people, I didn't spend the 3 months for that project studying advanced Portuguese vocabulary and expressions and fixing my grammar tweaks and so on. So that wasn't what my project was about. My project was entirely based on how I sounded. And I got lessons not from a Portuguese teacher, but from a music teacher who helped me reduce my accent. And my accent was more about musicality. So you would try to see how your voice is moving up and down in a language. So he told me, when you speak in Portuguese from Brazil, you gotta go up and down all the time. Speak through your nose like this. Okay, so I would say that you realize this and you follow this kind of music teacher person. Hold on. Yeah, you follow this music teacher kind of person to see how they're sounding, how you can reduce that tonality and rhythm in your language, and you will sound more like a native speaker. So even if the amount of content, the expressions you use and so on, you can get to a near native perceived level. And that's kind of something to take into account. And your interactions with people. I found in other countries, I would try to see, how is my body language? Do I need to walk differently? Do I need to have different clothing on? When I was in Egypt, I found that I was definitely never going to be mistaken for a native Egyptian Arabic speaker. But I did want to be mistaken for a foreigner less frequently and have people speak to me in Arabic more. And it turned out what I needed to do was change my clothes, change my grooming style so that I had a more Egyptian style beard, even change how I walk and how I cross the street. So that's one thing. But then if you're thinking the lower your subject topic, can't see it, mobile, live icon is blocking it. Yeah, if you're on mobile, then what you got to do is turn your device. Turn it to be landscape instead of portrait, because that's going to help, I think. Okay, so if you want to get to the advanced level from a content perspective, in that case, I would very simply recommend you try to sit C2 exam in your language. And this helped me immensely for my Spanish, because I had reached a stage in Spanish where I could do a lot of stuff. I was at the I'd say B2 level, where socially I could talk about anything, anything you would expect that people are likely to talk about in social situations. So it was a very good level, but definitely not very advanced or anything near native and so on. So what I did in those cases was, in those languages I wanted to really get to the advanced level, is I prepared for that C2 exam. So in French, it's the DALF. In Spanish, it's the DELE, Diploma de Español como Lengua Extranjera. And in German, it's run by the Goethe Institute, and in Italy, it's run by the University of Perugia, I think. So you find that institution. There's like a whole European common framework. You search for that, you'll find it for European languages. Then you search for advanced language skills for Chinese and Japanese. They have their own versions. And you try to sit for that exam and have a teacher help you prepare for it. And that forces you to learn what you need to learn to have that kind of level. Okay? So I hope that answers that question. So I'm just going to do another 5 minutes, everyone. And I'm sorry that I'm seeing a lot of questions come by. I'm going to try and do more of these hangouts so I do get to your questions eventually. Otherwise, we'll be coming back onto the Facebook page and on YouTube. YouTube doesn't seem to store the live comments, so you can put your comment in under this video when it's saved, and me or my team will come back and we'll answer as many of your questions as we can. So don't worry, we'll make sure that nobody gets to have their questions unanswered. But let's see. Yigit says, what do you think about the assimil method? Okay, let me put that in here. Assimil method. Okay, so I really like the assimil method. There's a part of the assimil method that I took some inspiration from when I was making my language hacking courses, because I wondered, why don't more courses do this? And Assimil do it excellently. And that's to give you a phrase in the language that you're learning, to give you its translation, so the conceptual, what it means, but then to also give you a word for word translation. And this is a very interesting way of teaching a language that I have not seen other courses do. In case you're wondering, guys, Assimil tends to be have more scope, more languages to learn in French. So in a lot of people's cases, they might use it as through laddering. So because I speak French, I learn a lot of languages through French with Assimil courses. So in those cases, what I end up doing is learning a lot about how the language works, not by reading grammar rules, but by reading those literal word-for-word translations and seeing them compared to the actual translation. And this is a very different setup to if you were to look at each word up in a dictionary, because it gives you the contextual actual translation, but also in the right order, because in a lot of cases the word order is going to change between your native language and the language that you're learning. So I really think that it's going to help a lot if you use Assimil because of this, especially because of that. But in general, I like their approach. I like these quirky little cartoons they put in their books and the way they present the language. So I'm a big fan of Assimil, and I took inspiration from a lot of, or from especially that aspect of the literal translations. I brought that into my own courses. If you guys are looking at language hacking after we do a conversation, we give this table of the stuff that came up in the conversation, and we give it a direct translation but also the word for word translation, so you see one for one what each part corresponds to, because it's harder when you see the whole phrase at once. So yeah, I'm a big fan of Assimil. And then last couple of questions. Agnieszka says, hi Benny, when learning languages, are you interested in using the right tone, for instance making sure you come across as friendly or polite, or just focusing on communicating your message? Okay, that's a good question as a wrap-up question here. So, is tone or basic communication priority? Okay, so in this case, I would say that because I'm a beginner, as I'm starting the language, the people are going to expect that I don't know a lot of things. And we forget this a lot of times. When we start learning a language, we forget that people know you're a beginner. So yes, ideally, you would use the formal you. I made a video about this recently. Ideally, you would use the formal you when you're in situations where you're buying something or asking for directions or so on. And you might change the amount, the kind of phrasing you would use to sound more formal to make sure your tone is coming across in a respectful way. But if you are a beginner, people are going to know that immediately. It's not like it's a secret. You start speaking a language, people know from your hesitations, from your accent, they know that you're not a native speaker. So in that case, I would say that you have to very simply just say what you can say. Try to express yourself using the words you do know, and you may need to have a tone that might not come across necessarily in what is typically the respectful tone in speaking that language. But that's okay, because people will hear you. If I was a beginner learner in Spanish and I said, ¿tú sabes dónde está? And I said that in a place where they would really expect me to use the usted form, I don't think that person is going to think, oh, how disrespectful. Blah, blah, blah. Oh, I can't even imagine what this person is thinking, using tú with me, of all people. They're not thinking that. They're thinking this guy's a beginner. And it would be the same as if a stranger came up to me and said, hello, friend, tell me where is. I wouldn't think to myself, oh, he should really have said, excuse me, would you mind telling me? No, he used a direct thing, tell me where it is or something like that. And I understand what he's going for. I know he's a beginner, and that's going to make me realize that he is still learning. He doesn't have to have that exact perfect tone with me. So that's something I would keep in mind when you are prioritizing. Try to prioritize communication over having the right tone. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this. I'm sorry I didn't see a lot of those questions. Questions will stick up on Facebook, but come back to this page if you this video when it's ready for the replay on YouTube. And feel free to put your question there, and we'll pop in. We'll try to answer them. And otherwise, you'll see me do more of these quick general live Q&As. And then tomorrow we're doing specifically travel, so only travel related questions with my friend Matt, because I had technical problems the first time. And then on Monday, I am doing a live study session where I'm going to go through the lyrics of Carmen, which I mentioned at the start. I'm going to the opera, and I want to share that with you guys and play around with live a bit, because I'll have some funny animations I can do while I'm learning. And yeah, so those are the live questions. Thanks so much everybody for joining. Really like hanging out with you guys, and I'm so glad that the only major technical problem I had today was that my camera fell over. I'll take that. I will definitely take that. So you're welcome, Agnieszka, and Até Mais, Liton from Brazil, and let's see, who else did I not say hello to? So yeah, Clary's that live in Columbus. Ayan, who's over in Twitch that I can see there. You caught me. You did. I told you to come find me, and I'm very glad I could see you there. I see comments. You can see, guys. I see comments here from every social media platform I'm posting on live, so I'm very happy to see them here. Okay, and then you guys can always say hello and where you're from. So hi here. My Arabic script is gone, so I'm just gonna say hi, Arabic speaker person. So M Zahir, hello from India, and goodbye back to you to India. And Linda was in Tokyo, so thanks for stopping by over in Tokyo, because I know that it's probably very late there, much more so than here. Murilo over in Brazil, obrigado, próxima vez, talvez eu vou responder em português. And then Matias in Bolivia, gracias. And Yeah, I think that's hola, yo-yo. Y hasta luego, yo-yo. And yeah, okay. So that's about the majority of the hellos and goodbyes and so on. And to John in Phoenix, Arizona, and to Jonathan, of course. Thanks for stopping by as always, and to Han Vietnam, and Kia ora, Ayan. Very good. And Bruno in Brazil. Yeah, it's a live Bruno. Like I can see this question from you right here, which proves that this is live because I'm responding to you, Bruno. So yeah, that's great. I got to say a quick hello to most people. So I'm going to do more things like this, but I'll see you guys later. Thanks so much for stopping by. See ya over in Texas, Mega SD6. And yeah, thanks everybody, and see you soon.